If a historical record of how many hours the author played Tetris, including its different versions on different consoles, could be available, they would likely be shocked by the amount of lost productivity. There is an addictive quality to Tetris, which keeps the player coming back for more. A movie that tells the story of how this time killer became an international sensation could have been interesting, but Tetris, which debuted at South by Southwest, tried to make a tale of legal rights and patents into something like The Social Network or an 80s spy movie. However, the pieces of the film didn't quite come together. Taron Egerton played Henk Rogers, the founder of Bulletproof Software, who stumbled onto the legacy of Tetris at a gaming convention in Japan. He realizes the game's potential, which had not yet made its way out of Tokyo, and wants a piece of the pie. The details about market shares, legal rights, and Cold War politics, rather than the game itself, drive the plot. Rogers, a low-level player in the gaming world, had to navigate power figures in both business and politics to acquire the rights to Tetris. The film opens hyperactively, using 8-bit graphics and Egerton's narration excessively. It then settles down when Rogers reaches Russia, where the KGB becomes involved, and he has bet his family's financial future on this prospect. As he attempts to get the rights to sell Tetris to Nintendo and bundle it with their new handheld, he meets Alexey Pajitnov, the game's actual creator, and makes rewarding the game's creator part of his mission. Rogers must navigate a structured Russian society, with Nikolai, an imposing figure at Alexei's company, and Valentin, a classic Russian tough guy who threatens to throw a child out the window, standing in his way. In addition to the battle between communism and capitalism, Robert Maxwell, played by Roger Allam, a true business villain of the 80s, was on the scene. He owned the Mirror Group, which published the Daily Mirror, among other things, and his son Kevin, Anthony Boyle, tries to profit from Tetris, allowing the Maxwells to become the big business figures standing in their way, with Toby Jones' negotiator, Robert Stein, in the middle. Despite all the intrigue and negotiation, Tetris ultimately ends up in a repetitive and monotonous place, with a tone that looks back on the 80s with a sort of goofy bemusement that feels disingenuous. The movie bounces back and forth between conference rooms and scary Russian alleys, but it never finds the right depth of character or deviation in either, choosing to enliven the dry material with an odd amount of condescension instead of actual tension. Non-Rogers characters mostly feel like archetypes, with the good artistic Russian, the evil muscle Russian, the whiny kid businessman, and his evil dad. Jones and Allam are wasted. To be fair, Stefanko actually beats the clichés most interestingly, finding depth in a Russian cog in the machine who realizes he may be looking at something his country doesn't want to let the Americans take from him. One of the many deficiencies plaguing the script lies in its inability to effectively portray non-Rogers characters beyond mere archetypes. The good artistic Russian, evil muscle Russian, whiny kid businessman, and his villainous father merely serve as hollow vessels devoid of any genuine emotional depth or complexity. The presence of Rogers' family, while ostensibly present for sentimental reasons, is but a means to exert pressure on the viewer's emotional faculties. It's regrettable to note that the talents of Jones and Allam were squandered in this production. However, it's only fair to concede that Stefanko's character development was a cut above the rest as he managed to sidestep the clichés and flesh out a cog in the Russian machine. The character's realization that what he has uncovered could be coveted by his country with dire consequences serves as the lone beacon of interest in this otherwise mediocre affair. The true tragedy of Tetris lies in how transparently obvious it is why the storytellers thought it was a worthwhile tale to tell. The Russian underdog rarely emerges victorious and is often incarcerated for even contemplating going up against the establishment, whereas American culture frequently celebrates the triumphs of underdogs over seemingly unbeatable behemoths. Hence, merging these two narratives to chronicle the defeat of communism by capitalism sounds like a cinch, and one could envision a splendid documentary being crafted around such a premise. However, as a drama or thriller, this story necessitates a distinct rulebook. Unfortunately, the team behind Tetris failed to grasp this fundamental aspect and consequently fumbled in their attempts to weave a compelling yarn. Despite Egerton's commendable efforts, the tedium of the proceedings will inevitably lead viewers to reach for their phones whilst viewing it on Apple TV. It's better to play Tetris instead.